And I think this conversation goes right along with what we've been talking about with us and what we're looking to do with connecting all the different generations. So excited to see where this conversation goes today, right, Dr. J?
Absolutely. If you say it, it must be true.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a great for those of you that will be joining us live. We're glad you're here. For those that might see us later on, that's great too. You want to share this content out because there's always amazing stuff that comes across on these corral calls, and our guests are always wonderful. And today, we're so honored to have Darien Sears with us today. How are you doing, Darien?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm great. I'm great. So a little back story. Uh, Darian's here local to where I'm at in Virginia Beach. And so we run in some similar circles, and that being the Christian Business Chamber that our friends, I'm sure you know, Joseph and Roberta, Darian. And so I've known them for a long time. And so was kind of connected that way and talking a little bit to one of the folks that you work with closely, Eddie Herrera, I believe. And he was like, hey, you need to talk to Darien. And I was like, well, for sure, let's check that out. And so then we're like, oh yeah, you're in the chamber as well. So that's good. So Darien, tell us a little bit about you're here in Hampton Roads with me and a lot of other people. We're not the only people that live here. But how did you get here? What's your kind of story between kind of growing up wherever that was and where you're at now?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. I'll start with I grew up in Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland, is where I went to school. I went to the Naval Academy for college, did tennis there 4 years on the women's tennis team. Graduated from there, commissioned as a naval officer in 2014, and went to San Diego for my first 4 years, my first two ship tours on a small ship and then on a larger ship, doing a bunch of different things. um, to go into detail maybe later. And then because of my pipeline, I started off kind of, they call us jack of all trades, master of none, which I don't really like that. But anyway, um, pivoted into a industry called engineering duty officer, and so that led me to go to grad school. They sent me to MIT in Boston for 3 years to get a dual degree, and then I left there, ended up here in Virginia, where I finished off my last active duty tour at one of the regional maintenance centers here on Naval Station Norfolk. And so that kind of had me in the shipyards and just working with more engineers and industrial type people, leaders, things like that. And I'm sure we'll probably get into it as the story unfolds, but I started thinking about business. God gave me ideas about business back when I was in grad school, because one of my degrees was in the business school, the other one was in the engineering school. And so that's kind of what sparked. And then he led me to leave active duty after almost 11 years. And so this is my first year on reserve duty, my first full year rounding out in November. Met Eddie as I was leaving active duty at one of his events that he was leading with Surrender Network and the team. And it just sparked a lot of different things. Long story short, I end up working with him now with the Surrender Network team, doing leadership, coaching, development, training, consulting. And yeah, that's how I met Roberta and Joseph all throughout the chamber. And it was just a really cool time to kind of jump into this totally different lifestyle of living and working from full-time, military to now full-time entrepreneurship. So then a weekend warrior in the reserves. But that's a long story short of how I got
Yeah,
here.
that's amazing. Well, thank you for serving our country and serving the people of the United States and all that. And sounds like you got to do a lot of different cool stuff during that time. Of course, for those of you that are not familiar with the Hampton Roads area, number one, Darian's a transplant because you said Norfolk like I would. If you actually grew up here, you say Norfolk for some reason. That's weird. But either way, it's tons of awesome military people around here, so that's a blessing. So yeah, thanks again for your service. I know Dr. Jay's and also a veteran, and he was on the Air Force. I know there's some people are like smart people go to the Air Force. I don't know. You said you went to MIT, so there could be some a little bit of rivalry there going on.
One team, one fight, we say.
Yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
sir, all day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, that's definitely not your typical way of kind of finding into business. Like, hey, I'm going to be in the the Naval Academy, and then, because sometimes that might open up to a career, like a full-on career, for those that go into the academy. And then, of course, you get some really great education opportunities. I mean, MIT is not just for the weak of heart. So tell us, like, as you're you said you had this idea of business kind of earlier on, like what was that initial spark, like you said, and how did you see God kind of direct your path, meanwhile in the military, but kind of moving you towards this?
Sure. I'd say honestly, when I joined the military, or when I joined out of the Naval Academy, I honestly thought I never really had a plan for my life growing up. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was like, yeah, the military offers a job, steady paycheck, all the things, right? And so a lot of us tend to go on like, all right, we're just gonna ride this wave until someone kicks me off this wave. But as I was in grad school, that was also during COVID. I was there from 2018 to 2021 when I graduated from there, MIT. And, obviously during COVID, what else are you going to do besides think? And, you got a lot more time on your hands, it seems like, because you're not going to and fro and all that. And so as I was doing my program, I had some exposure to actual entrepreneurship electives and things like that, as one of my programs was in the Sloan School of Business. Um, but it was still tied to engineering. And so I did engineering when I was in the Naval Academy, did engineering, at this college. And then getting to my first station here, it was when the light bulb went off. Like, actually, I have a lot more passion for helping people. It's always been a passion of mine. And I want to be able to do that more intently, more purposefully, and more fully, and
Mhm.
not as like a second nature thing, kind of behind the scenes of engineering. Definitely not a passion. I learned that after 10 years. And so, when I was in grad school, it was really, I had to do a thesis. And this was kind of my thinking of like, oh my gosh, I'm really not super into engineering like maybe people think I am. But I'm really into people. And so how can I, this is a time where I was getting closer to God for real, really wanting to honor my life in a way that maybe I hadn't in the past. And so there was a time where he was like basically encouraging me to give him glory in this space. My thesis ended up being in front of, he led me to end up presenting it in front of, a cohort of like 100 people on Zoom to like military leaders and like engineering type people. And I'm out here talking about Galatians 5:13. And, to tie it in a way that's like, ship maintenance, which is what I ended up doing here in Virginia, an unconventional approach to improving performance. That's what I was. But it was all centered on love. And this is part of my transformation that he helped intertwine. And I'm like, oh, wow, like, Lord, I really want to do this. I want to do this more. I don't want to sit behind the scenes trying to think about how to do this as like a second hand. I want to do this full time. How do I do that? And so that's kind of, I feel like in my electives in the Sloan School, it kind of helped. It was just sparking ideas. You're talking to different mid-career people who are either doing startups, full blown, or they're already in business. They've been leaders for X amount of years. So just that exposure, I think, really was like, oh, there's a different path of life I could actually choose. I don't actually have to do active duty Navy for 20 years. There's different gifts and things that he's showing me that he actually would have great use of, and that I get to help other people in the way that's true to who I am, and most effective. So it's kind of the short story of
Yeah.
these beginnings.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think it's interesting. Like, G and I are a little bit further down the road in as far as career experience, but I think we were both have been talking about amongst ourselves that we can see how, as God moves you forward, He'll use all these different pieces of experiences that we have, and we'll be able to kind of combine them together in what we're doing ultimately for God. So I know all these parts that you've played throughout your career development and training and all that are all a piece of what God's doing. So that's exciting, and how He's able to correct us, maybe, or correct course a little bit, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with in the Navy, and then get to the place that He's ultimately taking you. So you mentioned Surrender Network
Mhm.
and Eddie. So as soon as was that something like when you were getting out, that was the same time you're meeting him and starting to develop that, and what does that look like? I don't actually know a lot about that, so this is a great time to learn. Like, what is the Surrender Network, and how did that relationship really kind of kick off?
Yeah, so back in grad school, because I kind of have to start from there, which is when I had these business ideas. God gave me a name for my business, the one that I actually established, Armored and Anchored LLC. And it really started from fitness. It really wasn't until I always, obviously in the military, have had a exposure and a desire to be in leadership. We're expected to grow in leadership positions, not just being a supervisor or a manager, but actually being a good leader. And in my engineering duty community, it was starting to be more emphasized than it had been in the general public of Navy as officers. So, doing the Myers-Briggs and things like that, they didn't get it all right, but they were starting to. So I was like, oh, okay, like this is cool. And when as God was leading me to, because a year out, we have to give our in a notice to the Navy saying that this is our intentions to leave and exit. And so during that year, I knew that I had a business mentor and he was like, hey, get in touch just start networking, start building relationships with different people, with people who, hold the same values, people who can help you, who see the world differently. And my at the time, Armin and Anchors was like really fitness based just because of my background, things as he was leading me through, and his passion to help people be healthy and whole. But then as I was exiting, I think it was maybe I got out of the military active duty in end of October. I met Eddie in maybe September, something like that. But it was at a Christian chamber. I was invited by the Christian chamber, sat at the table with Roberta and Joseph, and it was at his event. And at the time, it was called Leader Corps. And
Mm.
I was like, oh my gosh, this put into words when I didn't even know how to put into words more of what I want to be doing day to day and how I want to serve and help people. And so got to talking, got certified later, like a month or two later, to be able to, with more confidence and more expertise, do these things for real. And Surrender Network, it's a small team of us, but we really have a passion for helping transform leaders at every level, and we do that through surrender. So like imagine, a network of even just of leaders. We're starting here in Hampton Roads and focused here now, but of those who operate with full surrender and truly living up in that fullness that God has for each of us, knowing what the heck that looks like. Not just having it be theory, but really being transformative, influential leaders who are making an impact on purpose, and being able to do that we say leading leaders at every level, whether it's the janitor because he's leading something, or the CEO. We're all supposed to be working synergistically to help actually get the job done that we were trying to get done. And so that was a real passion for me. I'm like, yes, this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dr. J, when I hear Surrender Network, I think it's something specifically. Does it bring the same thing to your mind?
2000 cubit rule.
Oh, yeah. Uh, yeah, for those that might be tuning in, give them a little bit about the 2000 qubit rule.
Yeah, the 2000 cubit rule is essentially when it talks about the Ark of the Covenant and when where are they taking the Ark of the Covenant back
They're
to?
going into the promised
Yeah,
land.
going into the promised land. And so the sense of it here is the Ark of Covenant represents the presence of God. And there were specific instructions that were given on how to carry the Ark of the Covenant, how far away to be. And so the whole sense of it is just leaving room for God to move, not being too far ahead of God or ahead of him at all, or even behind, but just right in step, right where he wants for you to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's why I
Yes.
was like, I know he's thinking the same thing I am. The 2000 qubit rule is really something that God put on our hearts as we kind of started working together over a year ago. And Surrender Network sounds like the kind of organization that's the core of it, right? Like, what's God doing in the leadership space?
Mhm.
And yeah, so you said it's a small team. You guys are working together with people here locally, but is that something that you're going to be expanding, or what's the long-term thought process behind Surrender Network?
Yeah, that's the goal. I think we really want to be intentional and focused and present with those who are here right in our backyards and our neighbors, and we truly believe that if we partner with these teams and these leaders to fill in gaps that, they may not have the resources or the time or the capacity, whatever it is, execution, the tools, whatever. We want to fill in that gap and partner with leaders right here in Hampton Roads because, I mean, I'm sure you've been throughout Hampton Roads and there's lots of development, lots of potential for development. And we could all benefit from having better leaders, more intentional, transformative, influential leaders here working together to improve Hampton Roads. And that reach will go even far beyond. So multiplying influential and healthy leaders, making healthy cultures everywhere. So eventually, yes, our goal is to expand and to reach out. But we believe that really starts right here and make like ingraining that right here in Hampton Roads.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so like you said, you kind of started out with this armored and anchored reality. I guess it's still out there on some level, but your primary focus now is Surrender Network and working together with that. So when you guys are engaging someone that's interested, kind of what's the step one that you're going to take people through? Hey, yeah, I'm interested in surrendering on the next level in my leadership walk. What does that look like?
Hmm. So it definitely depends. Right now, we kind of have a variety of how we engage with people, either on the individual level with executive coaching or the teams, which I literally just came from an awesome cohort that we're working with. And so it depends, I'd say, but typically, we love for each person to know their voice. And so we have this one tool, know yourself to lead yourself. And when you really have this awareness, and you take the log out of your own eye first, and you really are aware that, oh my gosh, this big old thing, I can see more clearly now to then be able to actually effectively help someone else and help my team and help my organization. And so it starts with understanding what your tendencies are and what you by default probably normally do. And then, what actions you might normally take and how to, call yourself up, call others up to choose better actions and be able to have this reality that we're actually hoping for or looking for. And so it really is diving deep into communication and understanding what trust looks like with yourself and other people, but really like peeling back all the layers and getting vulnerable, because you have to go there in order to actually be effective and really have that influence and trust with the people that we're supposed to be leading and working with on a daily basis, whether that's at home in your in your family, or in your community, at your church, or wherever you're at, or obviously where you show up to work a majority of your day. We're influencing people every day, whether we know it or not.
Yeah, 100%. It reminded me of something my pastor will say from time to time is like the first thing we lead is ourselves, right? Like that's what you guys seem to be talking about as you kind of uh, connect with people and know thyself, that whole thing, right? But then beyond knowing, like how do you become someone that leads yourself well, that allows you to lead others?
Yes.
Dr. J, you have a little bit of a question for us today?
Well, a comment, and then maybe Darien can elaborate just a little bit because when I was listening, I noticed a reoccurring trend. You've said working together several times. So that denotes to me that that's something that's near and dear to your heart for probably a multitude of different reasons. And so on this, or in this vein of working together and leadership, now from a non-Christian perspective, I'm not saying that Google and Apple or whatever, I'm just from an entity perspective, right? The Googles and the Apples of the world. We see time and time again, they are looking for growth. How can we work together, get best practices, that type of thing for growth, right? For money purposes. So can you speak a little bit more to the Surrender Network, talking about this surrendered life and what does working together as a leader, what does that look like even for like Hampton Roads from that standpoint, not being necessarily driven by money, but that's good, but really leading yourself and being, impact focused, impact driven. Could you speak just a little bit to that, please?
Yes, actually, I was reading in, I know you said in the non-Christian text, but there was a verse that just kind of came across my reading yesterday. Is Ephesians 4, and it says, it's talking about, being part of the whole body. And with it's supported by every joint with each part working to its full function. This is how the body grows and builds itself up in love. And, we talk about our desire to help develop people to be fighting for each other's highest good, to be for people, and taking down these walls of self-preservation to be like, what are we trying to hide? What are we trying to prove? What are we trying to gain? And if we could actually gain synergy with each other, because also I think we really know that we reach no level of success on our own. Whether you're a solopreneur, you're working from home remotely or whatever, like you still are relying on other people besides yourself to get anything done. And so just if we actually locked in and understood that reality and how we could actually make it the best it could be, this unity is so important. Granted, it comes with, all right, when you're choosing to go outside of yourself, and maybe you don't have a choice because you're showing up to work every day or in a business, and you have a multitude of different types of people. If we're using the body analogy, you've got a thumb, you've got a fingernail, you've got a foot, but each one of them are meant to do specific things. And to understand what each of those things are best at doing, what they're supposed to be doing, man, the body can function really well together. And if we really get to the point of getting there and having that awareness, for the thumb to know what the thumb is supposed to do and what it's good at, and then for the other parts to know what that is also like. And just imagine the unity, the unison, the synergy where you're not looking over your shoulder figuring out, are they doing what they're supposed to do? But we can go forward and be effective and be productive. And it just, we envision, and we've seen it happen in small, tidbits from one person to the team to then the organization. But like, wow, if Hampton Roads had a multitude of businesses and organizations and nonprofits or for-profits that were for each other, that were fighting for each other's highest possible good, despite, all the differences, the ways in which we see the world, the ways in which we have our default tendencies, like we could actually do that if we dig deep inside of ourselves, because it's hard work, to get to the point of like, am I going to be for me or am I going to be for myself? But I can still be for me and have my best self come up while being for someone else and keep that unity flowing. I'm not sure if that answers your
Oh,
question.
that 110%. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I was purposely trying to create a dichotomy between the way that Christians do things and what God has for them versus the world. Not that I'm knocking Google or Apple, but my point was, when you're money or profit driven solely, you quote unquote always find a way to work together, even if I will say you just hate the person on the other side from a worldly perspective, right? So, how much more power and authority do we have as Christians to be able to work together and create massive impact, even beyond that of a Google or an Apple? Because we know that we serve the God of all heaven and earth, who has all power, and He lives in us. So, thank you for answering that question. That is exactly the point that I was trying to make. So, thank you.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
By the way, if you're a thumb, I think what your primary job is to encourage other people because thumbs up, you know what I'm saying? If you're a thumb, you're in a good place. But you're speaking our language, especially mine. I've always had a heart for this idea of unity. And of course, the Bible talks about how important that is. And, in Psalms, it talks about the oil running down the beard of Aaron, like how good that is for the people of God to be together. And of course, the opposite side of that is where we see the world, right? I mean, everybody's got something against someone else. If you take the stance of the world, like and you see it a lot, right? It doesn't, there's all kinds of ways people find division. And so that's the enemy's plan. And of course, God's plan is like, hey, let's look what we have in common. And of course, there's a huge thing in common as believers, and that's we all love Jesus and we want to see his kingdom come. So that's awesome that is a focus of yours and what you guys are doing. Of course, the network is the whole point. Going to work together. We're going to bring this net, and yes, it's great to see what you guys are doing. And so yeah, as you guys are working with leaders, and you mentioned it before, and it made me think of this about the no matter where you are, you have a role to play in leadership. You're always leading someone. So can you speak to that idea that someone may watch this and they might immediately think, well, that's not for me, or leadership is not for me. I don't have a position or whatever. How do you address that kind of thought process that sometimes a lot of people run into?
Absolutely. And from one angle, we address it with like the teams that we're meeting with now. They're supervisors, they're leaders of leaders per se, or leaders of performers. Um, as we're thinking about, that those different dynamics. And so even people end up, even by proximity or how they're hearing stuff, they start to act in a way that is exemplary of the example that they had. And so if the leader is um inclusive in whatever, how their style of communication, their language, vocabulary, actions, that, hey, you may be, you just entry level performer, but yet like you have influence across your peers, the other performers, to do good things. Like everyone has the ability to have that influence and that impact, and you're going to do it. It could be good or it could be bad if you're accidental or intentional. And even when you leave here, you're not just an individual. Like it's no way to just kind of be wrapped up in your own little cocoon. You're going out in the world. You got to drive to work or come on a Zoom call. You got to email or text somebody, something. You're always going to be touching, pinging, transmitting something to someone and getting some type of feedback to continue on with your day, whether you're going to the grocery store. And so for those people, we like to say calling up, and it takes work to do that, especially if it's not your default as a leader, talking about different ways of communicating, like critiquing or clarifying and things like that. How do you really see what you might be doing on a normal basis and ensure that the lowest level people can catch your vision, can catch the right thing to do by you exemplifying that. And it has to be repetitive. It's not just a fire and forget. Like, hey, that you're also a leader, right? Even if you don't have all of the skills developed, but to like for someone to be called up and say, hey, even though you might not be acting like it, you just got in the game. You need to learn how to do your job first. You're still actually influencing regardless of that. And so you have a good responsibility, even if you didn't want it, it didn't ask for it. It's still inherent. So how can we make the best of your level of leadership, even as an entry level performer? But the leader that's leading them has to show how that's done, call them up in every opportunity that they get as they're also trying to lead themselves. Does that make sense, or does that kind of get to?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. I love that those thoughts about no matter where you are, there's a way to lead, and of course, we're all in process, right? We're continue to learn, and you talked about teams, right? We put in the title today, forging leadership in teams and things like that. And I look in you played sport in college, and just in sports in general. You think of a team and the necessity of working together, right? You always when you see someone that's really successful in sports, they have a full everything has to work together on some level, right? I've been a long term. You're from Maryland, so you might I've grown up around the Ravens, so I forgive you for that. But I grew up around what were the Redskins and now are the Commanders, and they had the
Mhm.
worst time for the longest period of time because there was a lot of leadership issues, and they started getting that corrected, and they've begun to perform a lot better. But it started at the top, right? The ownership was questionable, and then that just affects everything beyond that. So talk to us about team making teams, building teams, and all that. We hear that and we're like, yes, two thumbs up, encouragement on that forefront. But what does that actually mean? Like when we're talking about building a good team that's going to win championships per se.
Absolutely. I know, right? I'm in the middle of the Ravens and the Commanders. My granddad, he loves the Commanders. Other folks in my circle, anyway. I'm just like, I just want to have a good game. Anyway, um, I'd say what we really emphasize, and also what I truly believe, even from before working with Eddie and things like that, is trust. I got to the privilege of being my team captain when I was a senior at the academy for tennis. And granted, it's a little different dynamic because, either at best you have two people on a court at the same time on one side, and so there's a difference in the expression of team, even though, but you're still rooting for each other. We still have to come to a number of points in order for the whole collective team to win, that match or that tournament. And so trust, it does remind me, I'm drawing back now to those times, we're on six different courts, and we want to trust that, like, all right, each person on each of these courts are giving their best at each time, that they're able to show up the best that they can and give it their all, and that they've been equipped and that they've taken practice seriously, so that you can focus on, handling your part, and then it all comes together in the end, and we're rooting each other on and things like that. And so when I think about, being in the military, or just, being in like a corporate space, and you're in these teams that are not active, but I mean, you're running around taking care of things. You've got a job responsibilities list, and there's a set of expectations that are around, getting a thing done every day. Um, and trust can make or break whether or not things actually are fulfilled. I mean, there's a lot that is wrapped around trust, but it's the foundation. And so it it, it takes investment of time, of intentionality, of bringing down your own walls of self-preservation to establish and have that trust continuously flowing from person to person. Um, but if that's not even a foundation that you have between you and your team, you and your organization, then it's really hard to build anything. It's going to be, like we say, like on a sandy foundation. It's going to crumble at some point, because something's going to drop. Some terrible, storm is going to come by and just really see that, like, actually, Sally is, really not for Johnny, and so we might not do a job because they're having some type of clash or tension, and now something that could have easily been taken care of if there was trust, is now eroded because trust was broken, communication was broken. And so I think a lot of what we focus on too in the beginnings is understanding what are those deeper layers, so that then we can build on alignment and execution, getting the actual thing done. But in order to, like, keep a team together and to make it sustainable and scalable, there has to be a legacy of trust through and through, from the junior person. I almost said sailor. I mean, I'm still in the Navy. To the senior leader. Like, there has to be a level of, like, hey, I know that Seaman Timmy, that's what we used to say, is going to do what Seaman Timmy is supposed to do in the way that he's supposed to, because he's not just looking out for himself, but actually it's for his best interest that he also serves other people. That will also cover him too. And same thing with, the senior CEO, like, I'm for the people. If they know that and they've seen in action how I'm for them, lifting them up, calling them up, and challenging, we like to use a support and challenge calibrated mindset, support with the things that they need to do to get the job done, and challenge so that there can be a healthy boundary setting, if you will, to really help bring the teams together with all the different places that they're coming from, all the different personalities and skills, and things that they bring to the table. It can actually do what it's supposed to do, a well-oiled machine. But trust is the beginning and through what's going to keep a team together.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
amazing. That's absolutely amazing. It brings to mind something that maybe you could speak to. And I think it's, man, as Christians, there's a huge opportunity in the marketplace, especially when we are rooted and grounded in trust, for our fellow coworker or what have you. The reason why I say that is because years ago, during the World War II or baby boomer type era, there was this sense of loyalty, right, to a company, to an organization, so on and so forth, right? But as time has ebbed along, we've seen so many individuals being laid off, or a lot of toxic leadership and things like that, to where now people are like, well, I'm just going to do whatever it is that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I think as a leader, Christian leader, we have a opportunity to change the dynamic of what's expected, that, hey, your loyalty doesn't necessarily lie with, like, the company or with that person or whatever. Like, you're a representative of heaven, right? And so I'll say all that to say, what do you say to different leaders who they've come through the ranks, they've been at different companies, and they're a little bit jaded, so to speak. So that's why they kind of micromanage the way that they do or whatever, because they have all these things that have been built in. How do they begin to trust? I mean, what does that even look like? I speak from, personal experience. What does that look like? You talk about trust, but what does it look like?
It's true. I'd say one thing that was immediately came to mind was showing up curious. Um, there's a way in which you can acknowledge all the things that you're bringing to the table at that new venture, at that new job, at that new position, but still showing up curious in a way that says, okay, I'm gonna choose to give others a chance, and not assume that I know everything, not assume that I figured it all out because I literally just got here. And I may have experienced some real stuff. But this is also very new, and there's a bunch of wise people here, a bunch of skilled people here. Let me learn from them, to humble myself and learn from them. Maybe I'm gonna put myself in a position like maybe I do know better. Maybe I can have a teaching moment with them because that's what the time, brought. But like if you come up, I spoke with an old captain. He talked about a time where he got assigned to he's normally in this like engineering heavy, role, but then he got assigned to be the captain of this super technical like computer cyber type stuff, which is totally out of his swim lane, is basically the point. And so he was like, the only option I had was to show up curious, let others teach me and not assume because I actually don't know everything. And that built so much trust. I found like even, in my young division officer days where I'm like, I just got out of college, I've learned some things from my own personal experience, but this is a new adventure for me. So like, let my team teach me, and then build upon the things that I've learned from that, to expound upon or add upon, but never trying to resist the temptation to show up as the know-it-all and to let people's brilliance come out, draw out the wisdom in others because I mean people are there for a reason, and if they or for whatever reason not there, like help develop them, or maybe there's a better fit for them to develop somewhere else, who knows. But we're in an era of influence now rather than like just commanding. And especially like the younger generation, like they want to know things like why, like they want trust actually, and not just to like bounce from place to place. But that's just kind of the um scene that has been laid these last couple years, and being able to adapt to that, not just being stuck in the old ways, like I'm gonna just do business how business was done because that's how Johnny and whoever did it before me, and that's what I saw. But like we're moving just as technology is exponentially increasing every year. I mean, like we also have to like get with the flow, because things are they're just different. And so to build trust, to say, hey, I trust you enough that you got here. However you got here, I may not know, but there's something that is brilliant about you, especially I was thinking about, being image bearers of the Lord. And so like, okay, if God called you to something, I get the joy and responsibility and the privilege to draw that out. What is it? I want to help you live in purpose. Like you're here for purpose. And maybe we find out that you're actually not supposed to even be here. That's okay too. But like while you are here and are supposed to be here, let's make the best of it, and work it out. And that's the hard work is, am I willing to like, think about what I'm tolerating and not tolerating? Can I tolerate the fact that you're different from me and work with you in that? Can I I keep coming back to the self-preservation, but there's so many walls that come up for whatever reason that make us not want to do that hard work. It's easy to say, think this is how things were used to be. This is how I am. This is my makeup, but how are you going to come out of yourself and really be for people? Those interactions that we have moment by moment each day, that's part of the hard work, where you feel that urge or you see yourself almost third person wanting to do something that maybe not result in a healthy response and consequence, but you have the option and the ability to change and to choose something different. So I feel like trust is formed, as you're making those micro changes, little moment by moment, and they compound. I'm sure you've heard of that compound effect in that book, but it's so true. And being consistent in it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love this conversation around trust, and we'll do a little bit of a self plug here with the generations. I mentioned it earlier, but it really speaks to that. You were talking about the older captain and how he had to like shift a little bit because he wasn't really familiar. But it's this idea that all different ages, all different generations can come together and work together, trust one another and what God's given them. In some cases, it's like looking at those that have gone before us and they've gone all the hard yards and they've done all the stuff and they've got a little wisdom to share. And then, of course, the younger generation's got all the gumption ready to go and get it done, right? And it's posturing ourselves in a way that we understand that everybody has a part to play, just like you were mentioning earlier about this idea of the body of Christ, every joint supplying, and across the generations, it just multiplies. We see, uh, you mentioned the compound effect, right? Every generation coming together really makes a difference. And so the plug here is we'll have another podcast coming up soon. Actually, the second Thursday of the month, Oz Hillman and us will come together. We'll be discussing some of the recent events that have happened and what's going on in the younger generation. So keep your eye out for that, everybody. But back to today's show. Uh, Darian, so as you know, we're coming closer to the end of our time. Like, I was kind of wondering what's on your heart for the future as you look, maybe for yourself, but also just for in general, like the leadership movement, just what you feel God has called you to do. Where do you see Him leading you as you move forward in your journey? Obviously, you've transitioned from one thing, you're kind of getting going. Has God kind of showed you a little bit of the path forward, and what does that look like?
Yeah, as I've been having more conversations, he's been making it more clear. But so even when I think about Armored and Anchored, and I've been asking him, hey, Lord, can you reveal more about what that's supposed to be? Because I mean, if there's any message that I'm going to be an advocate for, I know that he's got to teach me myself first, to speak with that conviction and authority that comes from doing the hard work in me. And so, but recently, it's been this drumbeat of I go back to Malachi 3 and it talking about can we endure the day coming, where there's all this stuff going on in the world. And I'm like, I'm very purpose driven, growth minded oriented. And I get super frustrated if I'm not even doing that, so checking myself. But especially as Christian leaders, right? Like, what is the purpose of all this stuff? I mean, Jesus is coming back, and are we ready? I keep thinking about the wedding feast, the bride being prepared. So, like, whatever it is that we're involved in, nonprofit, for profit, whatever, we're employees, leaders in those spaces, like, are we getting ready? And if we're not, gonna physically be here, like, have we left a legacy of impact to prepare the future generations? And so when I think about that with the fitness piece, which will come back in full fruition, I call it leader fit, but really, like, are the leaders fit, are at every level to do what their function is to do? Because, we're all watchmen. We're all supposed to be doing something, an active participant in this preparation. We all have to, work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, but we get to also do that together and help each other understand what that is even, what that even is, And so I've been thinking about a lot of endurance. And so as in the fitness piece, really wanted to incorporate that into the leadership piece. Are we healthy enough to even show up? Can we show up to do the things that we're called to do? But there's an umbrella of wellness, of wholeness. So obviously your body, like, if you don't have your own body to show up with, I mean, what do you have? There's a lot you can't do from the grave. So can we really do this well? But then also with the leadership piece, forging those together, we just really need great leaders. There's almost like a deficit, and nobody really wants to take responsibilities because it's weighty, and the costs, of doing things and owning responsibility and accountability have been costly for people, whether it's be losing their careers or getting killed, all the different stuff. And so being able to be ready for those, and rising to the challenge for all of us, no matter what we're supposed to be doing specifically. So that's where I see the Lord taking me, and this, me on Armored and Anchored and partnered with Surrender Network and other, organizations, just this drumbeat of preparation and endurance and steadfastness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, it's always good to recognize and see those that have consistently showed up and kept doing it and kept doing. There's something to say. Sometimes we're really excited and drawn to that flash in the pan and like, oh, that's person's off. But then you check back a little bit later, where did they go? So that is a huge trait that we all should look after is being steadfast and being able to endure. We had a question in the chat. Got any advice for the next generation, the future generation, or the younger generation, what would you have to say to those 20 year olds, those people maybe just getting their career or finishing up college and moving out into that world?
Mm. Yeah, my youngest brother, I only have one brother. My younger brother, he's 24 now, so I guess he kind of fits in the future generation, right? He's my dad, just quick story. My dad is Army, retired. My brother's Coast Guard, Navy. We're just missing Marine Corps, Air Force. Anyway, but I'm watching him, and I feel like I get a glimpse into the life of a, younger generation. I'm 33, so, I feel like there's a separation. And I do ask him, like what's on you guys' minds? And granted, you're not speaking for every person, right? Because you're all different. But there's a generality of, of what's going on in you guys' perspective when your world, what you're exposed to. You're exposed to way more technology than we ever were. You're exposed to way more different variations of life, living, all these complexities. It's just gotten way bigger, more dense. And so I would say even just learning from him, which is, I see him, he lives down here too, which is helpful. So I get to have that exposure. But um, right now he's like really into work. And if he's watching this, hello, sorry, I'm putting you on blast. um, but just purpose. And maybe that's just I'm biased because I see the value in understanding your purpose, but also it's messy as you find that way. I hear this thing that people say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, as if they're like you have to have that coming out the womb or coming out of college, or if you never went to college, like you have to have your whole life made up, before you even really start anything. And I just find that not to be true because there's 50 plus year olds still asking that same question. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm like, you've been living though, so it's okay. There's a whole journey that you are allowed to go through that, if we're really following and trusting God, like he might pivot you, or he might keep you on the same way, but you're still transforming and growing. And so just allowing, we'll go back to surrender, like allowing the Lord to direct your path. I mean, you literally can't go wrong. It might be scary. People didn't understand when I was like, but you're like, you could go 20 years active duty, like you're gonna go entrepreneurship, you have a plan, blah, blah, blah. And like there's so much uh desire to hang on to security and stability, and all this other stuff. But I'm like, is secure really secure? The only true foundation is the Lord. So he will not fail you, even if you have no idea. I had no idea actually what this year would look like, and it's been a very long year, but he's led me and he's guided me. He's not failed me at all. He's brought a multitude of people like you all, plenty of other people to help be a part of this journey, but it comes from trusting him, from surrender. And so that's the best advice I could give is trust him. He delights in leading you. He delights in helping us. He delights in seeing us actually succeed. And it's way better when we like let go of that control that we try to have to make it work in some kind of way than just like, oh my gosh, Lord, you love surprising me. That's awesome. You love providing for me. That's awesome. I need that. So I would say that would be my one piece of advice is however the Lord leads you to journey with him, and he's patient, he's kind, to trust him, you can't actually go wrong. He is the one who knows you the most, and he wants to see you fulfill all the way to the end. He'll be with you. Um, so just try.
Yeah, I'll echo that as someone that's literally double your brother's age. If I would have thought about what I was going to be doing at 24 and what I'm doing now, I would have never been like, yeah, this is what I'll be up to. But it was, yeah, just following what the Lord had in front of you at the time. And I mentioned it earlier, a lot of times he'll converge all of these things and experiences and allow you to be able to use them even better, good and the bad and the indifferent and the ugly and all the in between. He's going to take all of that. And, we think about the verse, right? God works all things together for those that love and I'll call according to his purpose. And that's all of us that call in the name of Jesus, right? And so that's good news for sure. I wanted to bring everybody's attention to the Surrender Network. For those that are here, I'll drop it in the chat, but if you're watching, you'll see it in the description. Darren, I think you might have wanted to bring some attention to something specific on the site. Is there something that you'd like people to check out specifically?
Yeah. Absolutely. We love to engage with new companies and organizations or new leaders by offering a complimentary 90-minute healthy culture seminar, kind of like how I talked about in the beginning. We really believe and are passionate about coming alongside of people to show them what it's like to have a healthy culture in their organization, that it's possible, what the return on investment could be like. Just when I say investment, fully encompassing time, energy, your choices, obviously with hey, that's me.
Healthy culture.
Finances too. So funny. But it always ends up being such an enlightening period, if nothing else. And there's no obligation besides allowing us to serve in that way. And you choose whatever you choose, but at least you leave with some more tools in your toolkit, a deeper understanding of what that could look like for yourself as a leader, for your organization as a leader, as a team of leaders. And so, yes, if you like here's showing on the screen, you're able to book with us, call us, email us, find us on LinkedIn. We're all active on LinkedIn too. But we would love to serve in that way. It's always a fun time. We love building relationship. I mean, that's the joy of what we get to do when we're in these spaces. It's an excuse to get to know people, to understand how we can partner and help, and just actually, it's not just a catchy thing like liberating leaders of Hampton Roads, but like we actually want to do that, creating these environments of empowerment and just being for people. And even like when we talk about healthy competition, obviously there's competitors here in the area, but imagine if there was synergy even amongst competitors, where it's not like, I'm gonna hold the gate on, different things, but like, hey, how can we like band together and actually like be for each other? That's a level that we are hoping for, because obviously every business has to make profit. Every organization has a goal. We
Yeah.
want to help come alongside to achieve those goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think Jay and I, we talk about it. I don't think we see the word competitor or competitive in the Bible. So in the kingdom, we're here to support one another, even though we
Mhm.
may do similar things. And I want to draw people's attention. That picture of Darien, two thumbs up, by the way. We're drawing it all back together here. A full circle moment. You're an encourager. You've been encouraging to us, Darian. This has been a wonderful time to just get to know you and what you're doing with Surrender Network. It's really been a real blessing. Dr. J, did you have anything you wanted to kind of wrap up with?
Oh, yes. Mark, I was just thinking, I love my job, right? I mean, we have so many wonderful people that we meet through Sheep Feast and connect with. And I was thinking about JD with, was it Impact for Christians or Christian for Impact?
Christians for Impact. Yeah, yeah.
Christians for Impact. So, I mean, he is helping young people to choose careers where they can have the most impact. And I'm just putting this out here. I've said it time and time again. I definitely think we need to have a panel at some point in time, bringing people like Darien and JD, because there's so much synergy there. And since we're firm believers here on unity, I said, hey, why don't we be the tip of the spear and get it going?
Yeah, I love that. Darren, you guys, we might have to come have you back and have these conversations, like you said, with some other amazing folks that we've had on the Corral Call. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Thank you so
final
much.
words, Darren, before we kind of sign off for the day?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks so much for having me on board. It's been a joy. Learned so much from you all and from your previous guests, and look forward to yeah, hopefully being able to bless some people. And like I said, feel free to reach out. But really, we're here to serve. I'm sure people probably get inundated by that word sometimes, or it gets like overused. But like that's actually what we want to do: help make real results with real leaders, with real people. You deserve it. So thank you so
Uh,
much.
Great. Thanks so much, Darian, for everybody that joined us today. Thanks for being with us. And if you see this later, make sure to share it because this is a good word. It's a great encouragement. Get connected with the Surrender Network and Darian and all the great things they're doing. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.